we are saddened by what has happened. We have been talking about the illegal buildings.
This country, to be honest with you, allows lawlessness to thrive.
There were a couple of women that needed to move because they were becoming an issue. And so when those women were told to move, they started to rebel. They just stood up and said they've got connections and they are going to hurt us as the board if we don't move. And so we moved. Jay ran for her life because she was told, if you can't, we'll kill you. We left printers, phones, fridges, stoves, all in their place when we left, because we left as if, hey, we're not going back there to die. But the shelter was just there for the ladies to be there for 6 to 8 months to be rehabilitated with certain programs, social workers speaking into their lives and transforming, and they were given skills. The ladies needed to move after about 8 months to a year, maybe even up for some of them.
In the early 2000s, the city started dealing with what we call the bad buildings, and I evicted over 400 buildings of the type of Albert Street between 2001 and 2006, leaving a relatively small number of these bad buildings. That was the period of what you call building hijacking. Someone would arrive with a gun, say, I'm the owner now, you will pay me rent. That doesn't happen very often, and that hasn't happened at any scale for probably 15, 16 years. What tends to happen is, if you have a building with some kind of argument, maybe people feel that the building's not being maintained adequately, something like that, you get the development of a committee that say, hey, sort this out or we are not going to pay rent. What then happens is they say, right, well, we will pool our resources, we will collect our own rent, we will pay cleaners, we will pay security, and we will manage this building as it should be done.
It's a choice that people make, right? It's a choice between the street and that dilapidated building. And those who approach us have made the choice that the street is not better than the dilapidated building. Because if the street is a better option, then they don't require our services. And so they can basically go out but those who come to us are people who find that the street is not a better option. Why? Because these are mothers with children. These are, young people who, and sometimes very old, sometimes, grannies, old people who cannot be found on the streets because of the safety concerns that also come with living on the street.
We're currently standing on Wilmaran Street in Hillbrow, and the building behind me has been hijacked since 2008. This building is owned by a private property investor, Mendel Goldman, and he hasn't been able to get access to this building because the occupants of this building basically formed a committee. Now, when Eyewitness News earlier came to this building, the occupants said they would allow us inside to see their living conditions. There's no running water. The electricity they've connected to traffic lights on the street, which are illegally connected to now the electricity grid, and that's how they have electricity in this building. But they wouldn't allow us in essentially because on the day we arrived, after they agreed to allow us in, a representative from Siri was present and said they were upholding the privacy and the rights of the illegal occupants in this building. And all of a sudden the illegal occupants changed their mind and said we cannot come into the building. But it's buildings like these that are strewn across the city of Johannesburg that have been hijacked, and it leaves private investors with no legal recourse due to a constitutional court decision in 2011 in getting their buildings back from illegal occupants. These occupants are very educated about their rights, they are formulated and they understand what's going on in terms of the law, and so they band together and say that we're not going to be paying you rent anymore and we're going to be collecting rent and maintaining our building itself. But this never gets done, and these buildings are often then left in ruin.
Today, what are we, 15 years later, and we are still battling with the city, battling primarily the city. They, I would say, the biggest thorn in the process to get the building clear, because we've come across them as a respondent in our court papers, and the biggest issue is that the city are by law required to provide alternative accommodation to our occupiers, and the city have just kept on pushing the delaying tactics and doing everything they can to not provide alternative accommodation, which means that our property, which we own and which we bought as an investment, has been a terrible investment. We've lost millions of rands on it, millions literally, and the people living in there are living in as bad, if not worse, as the building in Marshalltown conditions. At some stage I had investigators go in there and they said that the electricity is being supplied by the street lights, the robots. We've had to do major electrical work in the substations in that building at our cost, with heavily security, because our contractors wouldn't go in otherwise. And it's just a disaster. I mean, there's about 250 occupants living in the building, also in shacks. Also a highly flammable situation with poor electricity and sanitary services. People are not bullish on the inner city to invest, and I don't blame them. And if they ask me advice, I would unfortunately have to be honest with them. So it's not a good story for investment community.
It's a very sad picture. In the last 15 years, the deterioration has been a roller coaster. In all aspects, that's the sad part. I mean, I can start with billing issues, estimates, changing of meters from one property to another, billing on a wrong meter number. I can talk about corruption. I mean, contractors going house by house demanding bribes so that they do not cut for services. It's been an old song. The general lack of municipal bylaw enforcement. The basis, we don't want to do, huge things. I'm talking about littering. I'm talking about cleaning the streets on time. I'm talking about attending to water leaks, parking. You can't have the whole city becoming a taxi rank. And that's exactly what it is.
We need to make sure that an ordinary South African who, as Presage is saying, trying to make a plan for his family, having a job, can access accommodation that he can afford in the inner city or somewhere centrally located that has dignity. That person doesn't have the option to run away, to go overseas or to go to Cape Town that is supposedly better managed. Those people will continue to be disadvantaged because the people that must account for things breaking, for things not working, are not being held to account.